I stood frozen at my kitchen window watching in shock as my sister-in-law, Amanda, destroyed the garden I had cared for over 5 years. She stomped on my special roses with her fancy boots and ripped out the wisteria vines that have been there for over 100 years. "This ugly garden has to go," she called out happily to someone I couldn't see. Michael says a modern design will help sell the house faster. My hands shook as I gripped my phone, recording everything. The morning sun made every act of destruction clear as she tore through the plants, ripping out pieces of history. My name is Olivia. And at 35, I was watching my husband's sister destroy not just my garden, but my family's heritage. This 1880s Victorian home had belonged to my family for 4 generations. Every plant had a story. My great-grandmother had planted the roses. The herb garden followed designs from her old journals. The wisteria pergola had been the backdrop for generations of family weddings, including mine just 6 years ago. I had worked hard to restore the garden, even earning recognition from the local historical society. But now Amanda was tearing it all apart, and I knew why. "This place will be worth more with a new look," she shouted. "We can put in a rock garden, maybe a fire pit. That's what buyers want." Then I girded my husband, Michael. "Just get it done fast, Amanda. I want the house ready to sell by next week." Of course, he was in on it. 3 months ago, he told me he wanted a divorce. What he really meant was that he wanted to start over with his 25-year-old personal trainer. I had refused to sell the house. It had been in my family too long. Since then, Michael had been pushing me, complaining about maintenance and costs. When I still wouldn't agree, he moved out but kept his key. I should have changed the locks. A loud cracking sound snapped me back. Amanda was smashing a pergola with a crowbar. "Be careful," Michael warned. "We don't want injuries." I almost laughed. He cared about Amanda's safety, but not about destroying history. But I wasn't worried. I had planned ahead. 2 months ago, when Michael started talking about selling, I contacted the Historical Society. Thanks to my restoration work, the garden was already in their records, but I took it further. With their help, I got the house and garden protected as historical landmarks. That protection order was finalized last week. Michael and Amanda didn't know yet. They were too busy destroying things to notice the official letter on the kitchen counter still unopened. I kept recording as Amanda kicked over my herb garden. "This is better than therapy," she laughed. "You should have left her years ago, Michael. Who cares about dead plants and old memories?" Michael didn't respond, but I saw him shift uncomfortably. He never understood my love for this place. To him, it was just a house to sell. This garden had survived wars, economic crisis, and storms. It wasn't going to be erased so easily. My phone buzzed. A text from Eleanor, the head of the Historical Society. "Got your message. Police and preservation officer on their way. Hold tight." I smiled and kept filming as Amanda dragged her crowbar toward the old stone wall. "This ugly wall has to go too," she said, raising the tool. Then I heard sirens. Michael and Amanda froze, finally noticing me at the window. I waved and held up my phone, showing them I had recorded everything. "What did you do?" Michael demanded as police cars arrived. I picked up the unopened letter from the counter. The Historical Society's seal clearly visible. "I protected what's mine," I said calmly, stepping outside to greet the officers. Amanda's face when she realized she had just destroyed a protected historical site on camera was almost worth the pain of watching my garden get torn apart, almost. The next few hours unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance. Police officers photographed the damage while the preservation official, Dr. Marcus Chen, documented every destroyed plant and structure. Amanda's crowbar was bagged as evidence, her designer boots now muddy and ruined as she stood solemnly by the patrol car. "This wisteria was over 100 years old," Dr. Chen said, examining the torn vines. "The variety isn't even available anymore. This is a significant loss to our historical botanical record." Michael paced by the gate, running his hands through his hair. "This is ridiculous," he protested. "It's just a garden. I'm a co-owner of this property. I have the right to make improvements." Actually, Eleanor from the Historical Society stepped forward. "You don't. This entire property, including the gardens, received protected status last week. Any alterations require approval from the Preservation Board. She held up a thick folder. The documentation shows these gardens are a living museum of Victorian horticultural practices. I watched as the reality of their situation slowly dawned on my husband and his sister. The smug superiority that have fueled their destruction crumbled under the weight of official documentation and legal consequences. "You can't be serious," Amanda scoffed, but her voice wavered. "They're just plants." "These just plants represent one of the best preserved examples of 19th-century garden design in the state," Eleanor continued. "Mrs. Harrison's restoration work has been featured in historical journals. The property's protected status means any willful destruction is a criminal offense." I saw Michael's face pale as a detective approached him. This wasn't going according to his plan. He'd expected to bully me into selling, clear the property, and walk away with a quick profit. Instead, he was facing criminal charges and hefty restoration fines. "The Historical Society will be pressing charges," Eleanor announced, her voice firm. "The documented damage to protected historical features is extensive. We'll need a full assessment to determine the restoration costs." Amanda burst into tears, her usual manipulation tactic. "I was just trying to help my brother. Olivia's being spiteful, trying to ruin our lives over some stupid flowers," but her tears held no power here. The preservation officer continued photographing the destruction, focusing on the damaged pergola and the heritage roses that have been trampled beyond recovery. "These roses," I said quietly, "were featured in the Botanical Register of 1837. The original plants came over from England with my great-grandmother. They survived 2 world wars, the Great Depression, and countless storms. I turned to Michael, but they couldn't survive your selfishness." A police officer approached with forms detailing the charges: willful destruction of protected historical property, trespassing, vandalism. Michael's hands shook as he read through them. "Olivia," he pleaded. "We can work this out. I'll replant everything. We can fix this." I shook my head. "Some things can't be fixed, Michael. Like trust, once these plants are destroyed, you can't just replace them. They're gone forever." Eleanor placed a comforting hand on my shoulder before addressing the officers. "We'll need to document everything for the restoration assessment. Some of these plant varieties are irreplaceable. We'll have to source similar heritage specimens from botanical gardens." As if to emphasize the magnitude of loss, a piece of the damaged pergola crashed to the ground, its century-old wood splintering on impact. Amanda jumped at the sound, kindly seeming to grasp the seriousness of what she'd done. "The preliminary estimate for damages," Dr. Chen announced, reviewing his notes, "is approaching 6 figures. The Historical Society will require full restoration using period-appropriate materials and methods." Michael's face went from pale to ashen. 6 figures? That's impossible. The pergola alone is a registered historical structure, Eleanor explained. It requires specialized craftsmen to rebuild using Victorian techniques. The botanical specimens, particularly the lost heritage varieties, are practically priceless. I watched as the officers led Amanda to their car for formal questioning. She'd stopped crying, replaced by a shocked silence as reality set in. Her attempt to help her brother divorce me had instead landed them both in serious legal trouble. Michael tried one last time to regain control. "I'll fight this," he threatened. "You can't prove we knew about the protection order." "The letter's right here," I said calmly, holding up the unopened envelope delivered yesterday. "Your choice not to read it doesn't change its legal standing. Besides," I gestured to my phone, "I have video of everything, including Amanda's comments about intentionally destroying the garden to force a sale." The detective took my phone as evidence, nodding as I described the morning's events. Each piece of documentation from the Historical Society's records to my video formed an airtight case against them. Standing in my devastated garden surrounded by the destruction of my family's legacy, I felt strangely peaceful. Michael and Amanda had tried to erase my history, but in doing so, they'd only ensured their own downfall. 6 months after that devastating morning, I stood in my garden watching as restoration experts carefully replanted heritage rose specimens. The Historical Society had helped source them from botanical gardens across the country, each one chosen to match the destroyed varieties as closely as possible. The pergola had been masterfully rebuilt by a craftsman specializing in Victorian structures using traditional techniques and materials. It wasn't the same one that had hosted a century of family celebrations, but it carried forward the same historical significance. Michael and Amanda's legal troubles piled up fast. Destroying protected historical property was a serious crime, and they were facing huge fines. The restoration cost nearly $300,000, forced Michael to sell his investments and Amanda to take out a big loan. Their plan had backfired. Instead of making money, Michael was going bankrupt. His new girlfriend left as soon as the financial trouble started. "The herb garden now matches your great-grandmother's original design perfectly," Eleanor said, standing beside me at the restored stone wall. "The Historical Society loves how authentic it looks." I nodded, watching workers carefully plant the herbs in their proper places. "It's different, but the same." Like me, losing my garden had changed me, but not in the way Michael and Amanda had hoped. Instead of breaking me, it made me stronger. My work on the restoration gained attention from historical preservation groups across the country. I was invited to speak at conferences and had even started helping others restore their gardens. "You've turned this into something incredible," Eleanor said. "Your documentation will help protect other historical gardens in the future." She was right. I had recorded every step of the process, creating a valuable resource for others. My great-grandmother's gardening journals, once just family keepsakes, were now part of a larger historical record. Amanda had tried to contact me several times, at first angry, then apologetic as she realized the full consequences of her actions. I ignore her calls. Some things, once ruined, can't be repaired. Michael's divorce plan had also failed. The judge did not look kindly on someone who tried to force the sale of a protected historical site, especially after destroying part of it. "The garden tours can start again next month," I told Eleanor. "The new plants should be ready by then." The monthly tours have been paused during the restoration. Starting them again felt like a fresh beginning, not just for the garden, but for me. "Oh, there's something else you should see," Eleanor said with a smile, handing me an envelope. Inside was an official letter. My property had been added to the National Register of Historic Places. Because of everything that happened, the garden had become even more important. "Your great-grandmother would be proud," Helena said softly. "You didn't just save her legacy. You made it even stronger." Looking around at the restored garden, I felt at peace. The roses were new, but they carried the same history as the old ones. The herb garden followed the same careful layout. Life, like a garden, is about growth. Sometimes destruction clears the way for something stronger. Michael and Amanda had tried to erase my past, but instead, they made it permanent. I noticed butterflies fluttering among the new flowers. Nature doesn't dwell on moss. It focuses on what's growing. I decided to do the same. "Time to plant," I said, picking up my tools. The Historical Society had approved a new section in the garden to tell its restoration story. Future visitors would learn not just about Victorian gardening, but about the importance of protecting history. As I knelt in the soil, continuing the work my great-grandmother started over a century ago, I felt grateful even for the destruction. It had shown me my own strength. Some things, once broken, come back even stronger. My garden was proof of that, and so was I. If you enjoyed the story and want to hear more just like it, don't forget to like the video, drop a comment with your thoughts and subscribe for more stories. Your support helps these stories reach more people, and trust me, the next one, it's even wilder.